Bienvenidos and welcome to Mija on the Mic, where Mija, interviews daughters of immigrants who are making moves in their industries around the world. Today, I'm so excited to invite writer, director, actress, and comedian. I think that's as many as I know that you have, Jacqueline Pereda. Jackie is an incredibly talented Cuban American writer, editor, and producer. Her show for HBO Latino, Generación Porque, made me laugh so hard that I had to jump into her DMs and set up a meeting to work with her somehow. She taught me so much as a writer, and I'm so excited to share her story with you. Thank you so much for joining us, Jackie.
Oh, Lori, so good to see you again. Hi, everyone.
It's
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening. It's been so long since we first met at the TikTok diner, right?
Yes, in Midtown Manhattan, right by Penn Station.
Yeah, it was a very New York moment. Oh, two Latinos writers meeting.
Yeah, in the middle, in the heart of Manhattan.
I remember when we first talked that I felt like immediately that you understood the experience and the mixed experience of Mija really well. So I wanna share with our listeners, tell me about how you grew up with Cuban culture.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so my parents immigrated from Cuba in like the 60s and 70s. And they had me in northern New Jersey, in Harrison, New Jersey. And I always like to tell people that, like, even though I was in the US, I immigrated when I was 6 years old. Until I was six, I went to like an all Catholic school with and all of my peers were Latino and Portuguese, and everyone came from very working class families, a lot of them children of immigrants. And then my parents moved me to like an upper middle class Caucasian Jewish neighborhood in Central Jersey. So I always tell people like I immigrated. So I went from, being around my peers, children of immigrants, to, you know, uh, being the only daughter of immigrants in my grade. But yeah, it's funny. My first language learned was Spanish, and I I learned English in school, and I really, until I was six and I moved out of that community, I didn't know there were other people that like didn't speak Spanish, that weren't Cuban or had Latino parents. So it was super interesting just how much your parents kind of inculcate you, how they really are your real world. Like, even though I was born in the U.S. My whole world was just my Cuban identity and my parents and extended family. But yeah, it's everything you would think. I mean, we grew up, it was really funny. I remember one year in like the fourth grade, our teacher, it was around Thanksgiving, and she had an exercise, and she was like, all right, everyone, like, what do you eat at Thanksgiving? Like, what are some traditional foods? And I like raised my hand and I was like, yuca with black beans and rice. And she was like, yes. Okay. Well, Jackie eats that. And all the kids were like, what is that? Like, you don't have turkey, you don't have stuffing. And I was so confused because we didn't, I mean, we had turkey, but that was it. But we didn't have stuffing. We didn't have the corn, the avocado, or whatever. So it's stuff like that. It was when I moved to like a different neighborhood, and I had more, I would say, whatever, like white peers, that my identity and my language and what I grew up with was just like really apparent, and it was like different than everyone else's.
Oh my gosh, I had the same thing happen when I went to college because I grew up in Queens, so everyone else was daughter of immigrant, son of immigrant. Everyone was kind of from everywhere else, and I didn't see that as being strange at all. And I was very much proud of my roots and had, Spanish and English blended, and it was fine. But then, you know, going into college, I was one of the only, sometimes, the only Latina in class, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
only person that wasn't, white American. And I was othered for the first time in college. Like, I really distinctly remember being in the classroom and being like, there's eight of us here and I'm the only one that isn't. And just feeling like, okay, it just hit me. I'm different in a way that I wasn't, exposed to before.
Yeah.
But yeah, and sorry, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead. No, keep going. Sorry.
No, of course. And I guess like the reason I love hearing these stories is that, of course, it's universal to feel kind of othered in any case whenever you're going to a new community and all of that. And so I wonder, what feels like the most home to you in that sense, because you have these two experiences, and of course you found yourself in both your whole life, but where's
Yeah.
home?
Yeah. And I just want to say, I feel like the word like other gets such a bad rap. And for me, I'm so proud of being both. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
I hold both of them so closely to my heart. And especially like being, and I know you know this too with your parents, like they're my heart and my soul. Like you can put me anywhere in the world and I
mm,
would still be so proud
mhm.
of being American and of being of like, Cuban descent. So I just want to say that. But what was
It was more about don't
what
worry,
was it
we can edit out pauses like that. No, I think like it's interesting to kind of hear you say that, because I always had the experience, okay, I felt othered, but
Yeah,
like you said, it's not a bad thing to be othered. It's also a place where you can kind of feel unique. But then
yeah,
it still kind of makes you question, like, what is home in this case?
yes.
Like,
Oh
where
my
can
god.
you find home?
Oh my god. That's all I write about, Lori.
I know.
I literally one time, a teacher told me, like my acting teacher, he was like, he goes, everything, your point of view in your work is always what is home? Where do you find home? And I find that you find that my comedy, anything I do, that's just always the undercurrent underneath. Like, where do we find home? What is home? Like, of course we have our origin story, but like what's like our like what do we have to sacrifice from our like origin story to become the people who we're meant to be.
Mm,
That's what I always write about, and it's not even, and I'm not trying to, but it's just something in my life because I think you're always kind of searching and you kind of have to make your own home.
yeah.
And someone, I remember Lin Manuel Miranda said this, and I felt he encapsulated it so clearly. How he was like, if you want to create a writer, let them grow up never being comfortable. So he grew up in Washington Heights, but then he went to a lot of like private schools.
Mm.
And so he had a lot of white peers. And then he would spend the summers in Puerto Rico, and his like Spanish was kind of like not good. So they'd make fun of him there. And then his friends in school would make fun of him from like being Puerto Rican or whatever. And I was like, that's so true, because you're kind of always between two worlds. And I can jump
Mm.
so easily. And especially with the Spanglish thing, when Generation Porque came out, when I did press for it, so many people asked, they're like, the Spanglish seems so natural to you. Like, what's your secret? Like, what do you do? And the only answer I had was, I was like, it just feels right in my heart, the characters, and when they speak, and that's all I had for them. Like, I think they really wanted me to like give them like a Spanish lesson or be like, oh, like, the first 5 words, and they switch, but it's no, because it's like I grew up the same way, and like
Yeah,
that.
like the formula, it doesn't exist. It's just
There's
however you
no
kind of
formula.
forgot that the word, if you don't know the word for parking, you say el parking, it's not the
Yeah.
word.
And just, it's funny. I think the Spanish, I did realize, like, when there's a lot of emotion, when my parents speak with a lot of emotion, they always only speak in Spanish, right, to express
Mm,
themselves. I think like a very strong emotion, any character, it's like they always kind of jump to Spanish, especially if it's like their native language.
yeah.
But it's just really funny because they're always like, Jacqueline, please tell me. And I'm like, it feels right in my heart. And they're like, okay, so thank you. Can you tell me something else?
Yeah, I always love hearing that, because there's this thing I think I once read. It was about what is the language that of love for you, which is your administrative language, and like which is your creative language if you speak more than two languages. And so a lot of people, if you speak two languages, there's always going to be the mom, the mother tongue, or like the love language, and then the admin language, which for us
Admin.
is English. So
Yeah.
uh,
But for Spanish for me, because especially I grew up with both, but my dad especially, like
mm,
it's Spanish for me. And anytime I hear people speaking out Spanish somewhere, I always smile. And again, it's so subconscious. I'm just like, oh,
mm,
like, you know, like that's home. Those are my parents. But yeah, I really
yeah.
feel like, and I think that's our job as humans, is to make home wherever we are and whatever circumstances we are. I just think when you're the child of immigrants, it's you just have to make it since you're younger. I have to say, like, you have to be kind of more self-aware, and you have to kind of use those tools from, like, for me anyway, I felt that from like as a child, especially, and
Oh
kind of
my
be more
gosh.
adept. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
that's kind
Uh,
of our duty early on.
I know. I want to hear about generation Porque, generación Porque, whichever way you want to say it. Tell us about the story, and then I want to go into the parents' relationship because I think that it's something that it's a theme that we touch on a lot in Mija because in the series it's always about this girl and how her parents are making this huge change in their lives. And whether the girl is born in the country or in elsewhere, like there's always going to be this kind of disconnect or connection with the parents' culture. So I want to hear about how you put that into your show, and how you kind of shaped that relationship with the main character's parents.
So Generation Porque, it's about a girl named Jackie. Nothing inspired by my life, everyone listening. No, but it's really funny. It was really inspired by my life because I moved to New York. I was the first member of my family to like move out of New Jersey and move to New York and pursue my dream of acting. And I feel like especially in the West and especially in the US, like that's what the parents encourage you to do, like find your dream, individualism. When I told my parents, they were just like, "Get." They were like, "What?" They were like very, very worried about me. And my experience of moving to a new place was just very different than, again, all of my peers and everything I watched on TV. Because like I loved comedy growing up, and like I would watch like Sex in the City and like, see like Carrie in bed with Mr. Big. And then I would watch these shows and be like, "What? Where are the parents? Like, why isn't her mom calling?" I was like, "Why isn't her mom ruining this moment?" Right? They were so in my life, like I couldn't, I don't want to say shake them off wasn't the right word, but they were always kind of just like, like on me and just worried, and that's just the way they are. A lot of it, right? That's kind of like the stereotype. So I really wanted a show to like capture that. And that's really where it came from, about a girl who moves to New York. And then she also has a first gen roommate who just is, she's Arab American. And then her kind of like Jackie's struggles to, like assimilate and like be honest with her parents about, her dreams and stuff, and kind of, finding her identity in her way. But it really came from loving all these coming of age comedies that take place in New York. And then the parents weren't there. And I was like, my parents are right here on my shoulder all the time. And if they're not physically there, emotionally and kind of,
like in your head and like
in your
reminding you, like,
head
what would
and
my
being
mother
like,
say? What would mommy say? What would
yeah,
mommy do? Yeah.
exactly. And then like, oh my God, Kurt, getting fired from her job. And then instead of being honest with her parents, just being like, I'm going to do this acting thing on the side. And I know a lot of people, they've done that because it's easier to do that than like deal with the shame, and then being honest with their parents and being like, I'm so, grateful for everything you've done with me, but like, I'm going to take this path that you may not be completely supportive or that isn't as secure. And, that's
Yeah.
all they want from us. Like they came from countries or situations that weren't as secure. And then they come to like this land of opportunity, and their daughters are like, I want to do something different. Like,
I want to do
I
something
want to
where I don't know if
pursue.
I'll make money at all. Like,
Exactly. And I'm going to do all these crazy, and I'm going to like delay starting a family and stuff like that. So it's
yeah.
very, and then to make it funny. So that's the heart of the show, and how she, and as much as she tries to outrun her parents and chase her dreams, she realizes how much she needs them and how just invaluable they are to her journey and her life. So that's the kicker, right? You're like, oh, if I run far enough away. And it's like, no, you're not. Like they're a
You
part
can't
of
get
you,
away.
and you
Yeah.
need them, and you
Yeah.
need them. Yeah.
I love that you talk about those nuances with comedy because so much of those experiences can be frustrating. They can be strained relationships. There's always a conflict in that kind of experience because the daughters of immigrants will have this burden of knowing the new country better than their parents, right?
Right. Oh
So
yeah.
you always have this kind of disconnect. And I love the way you do it in the show because you really get the sense that, she's struggling with it and she just, reacts in her own way, but she does it with such respect, even if she's making fun of her parents and laughing with them or laughing at them.
Yeah.
There's so much respect in that relationship regardless, and she cares about what they think,
Yeah.
and I think that's so beautiful. So that's why I had to message you like immediately after I saw it. I remember sitting in the living room, and I have I don't live in New York anymore, so I was visiting my parents, and I was sitting there watching it with my brother. It had just come on HBO Latino, and I was like, what is this show? I have never seen anything like this, and I couldn't stop laughing. Like every single scene, it was like a joke after a joke after a joke. It's like I don't know how you did it, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I want to know, like, what is your favorite thing about writing comedy?
Oh my, just like you said, like, comedy, what is it? Like the definition of comedy or laughter is surprise. where
Mm.
you just like don't see it coming. And for me, is just like the funniest. The parents are so strong in who they are and their convictions, and then they're just like so opposite of their daughter. And since it's her point of view, you're kind of like living in her world. So when they say these things or they're on her case, it's just so much funnier because you're like, oh my God, this poor thing. Like, you know, or she's like, oh my God, like she's lying. She's going back to her world in New York. But no, my favorite thing about comedy is that, like you said, just like highlighting the nuances and making people laugh. Like, honestly, I make myself laugh. Like, like I wrote that script and like even filming it, I couldn't stop laughing. Like it was to the point like the parents were so good. Like I ruined so many takes to the point Andrea Burns, amazing actress, the mom, she was like, "Can you just make believe we're in a drama?" She's like, "Cause it's just you keep laughing." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you're so good. Like you're so good at being the mom and the dad too."
Mm.
So yeah, and also I love to a comedy. It you can talk about with comedy, you can talk about really tough things
Mm.
and not preach to the audience. I don't like being preached to. Like with comedy, just allows like you see people living their life, and then you
Yeah.
can laugh and you trust them, and you can like open your heart more easily. And
Oh
I think
gosh.
that's what happened to and Generation Porque. And then the girl like, and also in comedy sometimes they're in on the joke with you. Usually kind of like the main character kind of a little bit since you're kind of walking in their shoes. So that's my favorite thing that I love about comedy, aside from like making people laugh.
Gosh, I love it. That show is amazing. Definitely recommend watching it. So, Mija is all about family and how our families influence so much of who we are. So, I have to ask, who is the person in your family that inspired your writing the most?
Oh man.
And
This
will
is
they
such
be
a tough
offended?
question.
No.
This is such a tough question because I'm like, oh my God, they all did. I'd say in terms of it's so hard. I'll just say my dad is the funniest person I know. Like his comedic timing and just his quick wit and how he just like observes the world and like he says the observation out loud and he just cuts through the BS. I think comedy wise, my dad is like my biggest influence for sure. I always tell him, I'm like, Bobby, I'm like, you would be like world famous if you wanted to be. Like if Bravo came in and like started taping in their house or with him, you know, like he would just be super famous because he's just one of the funniest people I know. And that's one thing too. I think it's funny. I noticed this about Cuban people, especially, like they have such a specific sense of humor. To the point one time I was in a store and the guy was speaking English, by the way, and the way he was just like going on and on talking to his friend. I didn't even see him. And I turned around and I was like, this is gonna sound really weird. I'm like, by any chance, are you Cuban? And he was like, how'd you know? I'm like, you the way you were joking, I'm like, I could just tell that you were Cuban. So I think in that, like the both of them, obviously my parents, like the dynamic, but I think my dad for sure, comedy wise, um, inspired me in that way. And then with my mom's a huge, believe it or not, like my mom's favorite film is The Godfather. So she really loves like American cinema and
Oh,
like
that's
really
so
good
cool.
film and really good actors, which is pretty rare, I think. So for her, in like in terms of taste, my mom has excellent taste when it comes to film. Like when she recommends me something or a show, and she likes really good acting. She told
Mm.
me growing up, she goes, "Mama, bringing you to like She's All That and all those terrible love nut like 90 movies where the acting was terrible, like those teeny bopper movies." She's like, "It was so hard for us because." She's like, "It was so hard for me because the acting was so bad." Like it was like those bubblegum pop movies. Um, so yeah, it's funny. They both really kind of influenced me in
Oh
that way.
gosh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So okay, so since you had that kind of education in terms of media and comedy that you were growing up, who was your favorite? I would say comedian or favorite actor, writer, anyone who kind of inspired you that you'd seen, maybe recommended by your parents.
Not so much recommended. My mom loved In Living Color. So I love that show.
Mm,
Remember Living Color, the sketch
yeah.
comedy show with Keenan Ivory Wayans and Jamie Foxx was discovered there. Jim Carrey, J Lo, Jennifer Lopez was a backup dancer. Like I specifically remember watching that and loving it. And then also Saturday Night Live, SNL. Um, And then my mom too loved the Kings of comedy. So a lot of like the Steve Harveys, the Bernie Macs, like she would watch those because she also
Mm.
really liked comedy. So like literally the comedy greats now and the people that left a mark on the culture, she was watching them early on in their careers. Or that was the type of, in that era, like in the 90s, like the Fox, like all like the Fox TV shows, like,
She was into the OG.
yeah,
Yeah.
Martin. And then we loved, and then of course like Full House, like all these really great sitcoms,
Mm.
like that awesome 90s era. But my mom really loved In Living Color, and like I just remember that show still to this day. People ask me, and I'm like, yeah, I would love to meet Keenan Ivory Wayans one day. Like it just In Living Color was genius and really kind of set the bar for, I think, comedy and finding these incredible actors.
I think the 90s was a really good era for TV generally. It was also where I was inspired by a lot of different shows like Taina. Do you remember that? It was a Nickelodeon comedy about this Puerto Rican indigenous girl living in New York. And yeah, and she was like going to the Fame High School, and it was like all about how she wanted to follow her dreams, and her family didn't approve of it. And I was like, you know, that storyline, but in the 90s. And like so many things like that, the Garcia brothers, the George Lopez show, like there was a lot of really cool multicultural stuff coming out at that time. And I think
Yeah.
growing up with that, I was very much inspired to kind of emulate that, but with our shows. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about LCT.
Oh yes, Jacqueline. Oh my God.
Speaking of Spanglish and 90s TV and 90s audio.
Oh, what a beautiful segue.
Yeah.
So natural.
So for those of you who don't know, I created La Cabina Telefonica, a sitcom podcast novela for Spotify. It tells the story of Mati Cardona, a Colombian immigrant who runs a Cabina Telefonica in Jackson Heights, Queens, with her Americanized daughter, Rossi. Together, they host clients from the neighborhood who come in to make phone calls. Each episode is one phone call, one story from El Barrio. And in total, we worked on 50 episodes of this show with Jackie, and it was nominated for the 2023 Webbies. You can binge it all on Spotify now. So, Jackie, you were our story editor on the show and the voice of reason when we were blocked on scripts. Please tell us about your approach to these characters and which characters you connected with the most.
Voice of reason, the VOR. Well, it's just my job. Like, it was just so much funny just to make everyone just like the stakes higher, to make them funnier, more ridiculous. And by more ridiculous, it's not making fun. It's just like making the stakes higher. And it's like, what would be Maddie's horror right now? Like, what would just send her over the edge if this happened? Like, and what would she say? That's really my thing. It's just like thinking about the characters, like who they are, their point of view, and then just kind of torture them with conflict, right? Like torture them with conflict and then be like, how would they react? And what would they say? And, how would this be even like funnier, even more tender or more heartwarming, or like how to make the situation, like tug at like Maddie's heartstrings more, or like how would the situation force her to, grow and accept her daughter more, or would it, make her run back towards the old world more? That's really the approach I use. But just like when I edit or do comedy, she's like very intuitive. It's like really understanding and kind of like respect, like you said, the whole respect thing. It's just like I respected every single one of those characters and just really like holding them like unconditionally, right? Like not judging them or their reactions or what they would do.
So love your characters like you love your family.
Yeah, you do. And even the ones that you're just like, oh, like I would never do that or whatever, but who do I really like my favorite character, of course I loved Maddie. Like she's a star of the show, but I really also loved Gadiel a lot. I really liked him. Yeah, I really liked like editing and like writing for him. He was just, his heart was really pure all the time. Yeah. No matter all his drama, like his core was good. Very pure. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm always, because you've met people in your life and their behavior and their actions, it's like you're so pure and you have such a good heart.
But you keep messing up.
You keep messing up, but like I see your core, like, and it's good and it's there. It's just you need a little guidance. And yeah, it's funny because when you asked my first character, like when you were making the intro before, and you were going to
Mm.
ask me that question. I was like, oh, I'm like right away. I was like, oh, Galileo.
Oh gosh,
And I think it's that.
I would
I
have thought
think
it would be Abogado Perez or somebody like that.
oh
That
my
would
God,
catch
yeah.
them.
Well, him, yes, yeah. Like, well, yeah, like the ridiculousness of it.
Oh
But
gosh.
Gadiel, I think his some like his heart, the way we originally like conceived him and the character, there's always something really like the love that was there was so pure,
Mm.
you know?
I could
Like,
tell. I like I've seen characters like him. I've known people like him. So when we were putting together that character, it was like, yeah, this he's a lovable person no matter
yeah,
what he does. And yeah, I love being able to put characters like that are complex,
yeah,
but that have this, you know, warm thing about them.
the warmth,
And
yeah, underneath.
oh gosh, yeah. And my favorite one though for me is Abogado Perez. Like, I mean,
Oh,
besides Mati, because Mati, of course, I wrote her, and
yeah,
she was, you know, inspired by these two women in my life. That was my mother and this other woman who's her close friend who actually worked in the cabinas, and so I gave the name of the character
yeah,
as like Mati for my mom and Cardona, which is the last name of the other woman. So it
yeah,
was like this is a combination of two people. um but besides that, it was like Abogado Perez gave me the most freedom as a like to put in comedy, like actually have fun with something so ridiculous. And I really appreciated your approach because you gave me so much freedom to like think outside the box from what I was like originally conceiving of this character, and like going further and like why not make him write, you know, come in and do ads like for
yeah,
his business and like have like creative little puns all the time. Like why can't he do that? Because I've seen people like that, and again, like it's very much about like a love letter to this neighborhood of people who are all hustling and like in the most endearing way really trying to get by, and I loved being able to kind of celebrate that with the show. But I definitely had moments when we were writing this, and you know, Jackie, because you were there and you were, you know, on the Zoom calls with us in the writers room, is like the struggle of, you know, being stuck and like not thinking that I can really write this, and like feeling like imposter syndrome and like not really being able to, you know, yeah, like no one in my family is a writer like that, so I couldn't even like kind of go for to someone for advice. And this, I'm writing a novela. This is, I'm not a trained writer in any way, but I, you know, came up with the story, created the storylines. This is my show. I
yeah,
had so many doubts about it, and you know, I'd had big dreams as a kid of writing, but I, you know, I had never gotten this opportunity before, so I was freaking out about it. And so I
yeah.
want to know, like, you supported us so much in this process and you supported me, and I really appreciate it. And I want to know how you felt when you were starting out as a writer, and like, do you have that imposter syndrome feeling?
Yeah,
And what do you
and
do about it, and like how have you gotten over it?
it's so funny. Not that I'm struggling. I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's the expectations. It's you don't want to let people down. When I'm
Mm,
struggling, I told this like when I have writer's block or I feel blocked or I feel like I can't do it, it's because I'm putting this pressure on myself. Like when we're kids, I was never like when I was playing with my sister and I was like, okay, I'm the astronaut and like
mm,
you're, you know, the McDonald's worker. I never was like, oh, am I the astronaut? But like, am I like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. Just like kids play, right? We're just like, I'm gonna do
mm,
this. And that's where our best work comes from, where we just let it go. But
mm,
it's the expectations, and especially like, oh my God, this may be my only opportunity, or like, I feel so lucky. There's so many people that didn't have this opportunity, and you know, everything my parents sacrificed, right? It's like you do this whole thing rather just being like, oh, this is gonna be, you know, a great like, you know, like a fun like assignment, and I'm gonna have fun with these characters, and let's see what happens. Like, you know, more loose and fluid. Like instead of
mm.
making it a play date, it's like we have to get this right. We have to get it done. And
Yeah,
but I get it. And I don't want to say always struggle. Everyone struggles with that too. I just think women admit it a little more. But I think
yeah,
everyone, and I don't think imposter syndrome is that. It's just you don't want to do a bad job and you want people to love it as much as you do versus
yeah,
being like just trust it. Like they will. And that's the thing, like loving. And that's why when you said how you said earlier about like I could tell you hold these characters and especially in your show like the parents with respect. Like I
mm,
love that because that means I did the right thing.
yeah,
Because when I was writing it, I held them that way too, like with that
mm,
tenderness, you know. So yeah, that's but I get it. It's so hard. And again, and we don't work in an industry where people are just like gainfully employed, like the
Mm.
opportunities come and go. So I think it's the pressure we put on ourselves. And then just the other writers block too sometimes. It's because I want to write something and I don't have the guts to say it. That's like the other subconscious that really happens. I'm afraid
Mm.
to go somewhere. Like, oh God, I don't want to do this. Like, oh, this feels icky. Or like, like, oh, I don't want to go there. And then your body just protects you from that like conflict.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I've had moments of that. And I've also had moments of just kind of being able to accept the process and like be
Yes.
like, rewrite, rewrite, rewrite as much as you need to, kind of thing.
Yeah. And you're great at that. You're like,
Yeah.
you just go for it. And you
I
should be
try.
so
I
proud.
try.
Yeah. And that way, because so many people, they don't want to go there, or because writing is rewriting and you have to edit it a lot and then talk to people and take, like it's like a, like sculpting, sculpture. You know what I mean? It's like you cut, or like cutting a piece of meat, like you cut all like the fat away, like the meat's
Mm.
there, but then like to make it like the right cut, you have to keep going and manipulating it to
And
kind
then
of
you
like
get it to the
get to the
perfect
core and the
thing.
truth.
Yeah. Gosh. All right. Coming to kind of what we're working on now, what we're most proud of, I would love to hear what you're like most excited about that you're doing now.
Oh my goodness, what am I most excited? So I've been doing a stand-up comedy
What?
more recently. Yeah. So that's been awesome. So all of my my truth bombs and my crazy ideas I used to hide behind characters are now
Now
coming
you're
out
doing it
of
from
my
you.
mouth that I have to own. That's fun. And then also I'm working on like another film that takes place. I used to be a Zumba instructor, like in the Zumba world, and then another I told you the pilot.
Hmm.
Levels. So I'm still working on that, but I'm most excited about um I'm so glad I said this before, like surrendering to the process of these, because again,
Hmm.
like when you have success or people are excited to read your work, that pressure, mounts. But I'm excited to just like let it go and continuing and like writing really truthful, like funny work.
Things. Yeah, I always think like,
Yeah.
okay, calmate, like drink a tea,
Yeah.
calmate.
Work
Like,
and have fun.
send
Yeah.
it.
It's like this is supposed to be fun, remember? Like this is
Yeah,
supposed to be
this is
fun.
everything you dreamed. What are you doing? Don't be upset. um, so one of the things that we do a lot in Mija is these kind of like vignettes with, sound design and like kind of almost creating an audio photo moment of like a
Mhm.
happy memory. So I
Mhm.
would love to hear your like a treasured memory that you have from your childhood that kind of, I guess, encapsulates, you shared a few before, but one that maybe shows your experience with the two cultures, maybe a Spanglish kind of coming out, or something that made you feel like, yeah, that represents me.
I think what really represents, so I had a quinceañera
Okay.
when I was 15, and we had a full court, right? So I had to get like 14 boys and 14 girls. Okay.
Wow.
So of course we have like my cousins, extended family friends that are Latino that absolutely like they knew what a quinceañera was, and I danced in theirs. So they were like, of course we'll be in the like we'll be a chamberman or chambermaid, whatever they were called. And then I had to explain to my American friends what it was. And one of my friends, Jared, I asked him if he wanted to be in my quinceañera. And I told him what it was. And he was like, okay, no problem. Then he comes back the next day to school and he's like, hey, I asked my mom if I could be in your quinceañera. And she wants to know if it's like something I have to audition for and if it's run by the high school. Like he thought it was like a play. So that was just that was just the perfect like encapsulation of both worlds. And I just remember like laughing so hard. And then, having to tell my friends like, oh, I have quinceañera practice. And then like, going to school, coming home, and then like having practices with my friends, and then having like
Mm.
my family flew around the world to share this experience, but then also having like my American friends to share with me. So that was one of like my fondest memories, like that party, the coming of age at that time, but then also like that moment when he's like, hey, I'd love to be a part of this, but like is this like through the school? Like, do I have to sign a permission slip to be in your play? I'm like, it's not a play. It's a coming of age. Like I had, and people are like, is this a wedding? And I'm like, no. It's like, but they're like, this sounds like bridesmaids. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is,
so
you know,
funny.
this is like a coming of age, like almost like, you know, ceremony. And I would say it's like my bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah. And they'd be like, oh, I get it now. Yeah. So that's like, that's my fondest memory. Of course, like sharing that moment with my family, you know, but like also with my peers at that time and in high school. And then also, you know, like you're 15, it's kind of like that awkward age, and like you're not, you know, you're not like a kid anymore. You're more of a teenager and like closer to an adult. So it was just so great. And then like my uncle was there, and he's like a santero, like he was dressed in all white. So then my, you know, my friends from high school were like, oh my God, like what's the guy in white? Like, what's that about? We love him. Like they had so many questions about it there. And then me just being like, oh, like, let me explain to you. Like I never felt offended. I was like, oh, like, let me explain to you what's happening. And I thought like salsa music was so cool, and like everyone dancing together and having the best time. So that's probably my fondest memory, I have to say. And and one of the funniest too, for sure.
I love that. Oh gosh, I had like many experiences like that in high school, where be invited to like a Greek quinceañera, because that's a thing too. But I don't remember what it was called, but it's like the same kind of event. Like, yeah, I mean, like there's tons of things like that are cultural that you don't even think about it, but there's like coming of age things in every culture, and like the same thing kind of thing where somebody would like have to explain everything to you. Be like, sure, I'll do it. Why not? That's what it is. Thank you for sharing that. So we're coming to the end now. So I want to ask you some quick questions. And this is like a speed round, right? And answer as fast as you can without thinking, all right?
Oh my God. Oh, Lord. Okay.
Okay. Queens or Manhattan?
Queens.
Bagel or empanada?
Empanada. Oh my God.
Ropa vieja or arroz con gandules y plátano?
My heart is like Cuba, ropa vieja. But like I love arroz en plátanos con candules. So I'm gonna say that. And oh my God, sorry, mommy and papi, if you're listening. Oh my God. I'm so bad. They're gonna kick me out of the culture.
You're gonna lose your Cuban card.
My Cuban card after this.
Revoked. Okay, yeah. Call or text?
Oh, I'm calling all the time. Of course.
All right. If you could like write and work on any reboot from the 90s, which would you write?
This is such a good question. This is so hard. And reboot from the 90s, and I would write it. Can I say in living color or no?
Yeah, you can say
living color. In living color, yes, obsessed, because I love sketch comedy.
All right. What was your last Google search that you were comfortable sharing?
Oh my, I'm comfortable sharing, but like I need a life. So I'm obsessed with Chopped on the Food Network. And I've been like cooking a lot. And last night I was like, maybe I can go to culinary school, and like looked up the CIA. Okay.
Why?
Because I'm me. Because this is what you do as a writer. You're like, why I can't write today. I need to find out the curriculum requirements to get like a culinary arts certificate. So I can't write my pages today. That'll be tomorrow. I need to figure this out consciously, and then I can move on. Literally though, that's why I'm laughing. I literally did that last night. CIA.
And not that CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, guys.
Yes,
for those of you who don't know, the CIA also is that. All right. If you could hang out with any character from La Cabina Telefonica, who would it be, and why?
Oh my God. Oh, can I say Isamad, like for short?
Yeah.
But then also the brothers. What was the
Martinez brothers?
The swab one, Sebastian. He's the swab one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to hang out with him. I want to get drunk with Sebastian. Okay. Use all his pickup lines on me. That's what I want. I love it. Can I hang out with the hot twin, and then he can use the pickup lines, and then Isamad can come and be like, "Te veo tu futuro." Can that happen?
dream scenario. I love it.
Oh my God. Oh Lord.
Oh, that was such a good show. It was very fun to work on. All right, last question. Now, I
Yes.
want to ask this two ways. So, the first way is, what is your most embarrassing dream? And you can answer this however you want to interpret it. And then I'm going to ask you, what is your like biggest dream like in life?
My most embarrassing dream, I don't even think it's embarrassing, but I look back. Well, first of all, I always just wanted to be a pop star. Like I want to be Christina Aguilera or Whitney Houston. Like that's like that still, I don't care. I'll say it. Like I'm only here because I can't sing like Whitney Houston. That's number one. That's the only reason. So we'll do that. The second one is for a long time. I wanted to be like a White House press reporter. Like I want to be
So
like the White House
specific.
press secretary, which is hilarious. Can you imagine me?
Yeah.
No, being like, this is what's happening in Ukraine and not try to crack a joke. Like it is just so it's just so funny to me. Like that's embarrassing. But I went to school for journalism. So I loved and I still do, which makes sense. Like I love the truth, right? Telling the truth. And I would always write like really like funny articles. My teacher would be like, you're really funny sometimes, like your intros and stuff. But that's probably the most embarrassing and being like, you what?
You almost
You
what? That
wanted
was your
to
dream?
be like
You
you
wanted
wanted
to
to
be
be
a
that
pop star slash White House correspondent.
yes. I think it's White House, and then now I'm like, let me go to culinary school. Why not? Why can't I'm yeah. So that's, but I was always like that since I was younger. I used to tell people that I was going to be a doctor, actress, dancer, and then
I
make
think
movies on the weekends.
I
And
love that.
like, oh, okay,
I think I had the same thing where at one point I was like, I want to be a doctor, lawyer, writer, journalist, all of them, like
yeah,
at once.
yeah,
I think it's like all of us we grow up with this like you can do anything kind of
yeah,
thing because our parents couldn't, so they're like you can do anything.
yeah. And you're literally like, I'm
Yeah,
gonna do it
it was like ¿por
all.
qué no? ¿Por qué
Yeah.
no?
My mom was like,
Yeah.
Mamita, you're not gonna like that's a lot. But it's funny because one day I was like shooting Generation Porque on the weekends and at night. And then I was teaching Zumba at night and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm living my dream. Like I was like literally like, because I want to be like a dancer, actress, and like shoot movies
And
on the
you were
weekend.
literally doing it.
I literally was doing all that. And like I had a day job. I was like, oh wow. I had like a moment. I was like, wow, like 10-year-old Jackie, she'd be so excited.
Hmm.
Except the doctor part. I was like, no,
Except the
no.
doctor, not the
We don't
doctor.
do the science and the math. We don't do that.
No.
The blood. We don't do that.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Thank you so much, Jackie. This has been so much fun. I
Yeah.
have one last question for you, and it's a question for advice. What advice do you give to Mijas like ourselves who are scared to take the leap and start writing their stories in any way that they want to?
And start writing. Well, first of all, we have like one life and you have to have like, you just have to go for it. And what I always do is like I think of my grandmothers and stuff, like everything they sacrificed for and had to go through. And it's like if you don't want to do it for you because you're too scared for you, do it for them. Like tell your story because they didn't have the opportunity to do so because of their circumstances. So like you have the voice. We live in a time where we're allowed to and like we can
Mm.
share our stories and like not get kidnapped and go to jail and be like political prisoners. So that's the pep talk I give myself. And I'm just like, just go for it. And it's fun and you learn so much. And when you share your story, this is gonna and this sounds like cliche, but it's so true. When you share your story, so many people are validated by it because we all go
Mm.
through the same struggles. You know, even people that were born in America, they like grew up in the Midwest and they're like Generation Porque, like those are my parents. Like when I moved to New York, they did the same thing. They gave me like an angel keychain and you
Yeah.
know, like they were so worried about me. They didn't understand why I want to like leave my small town to, you know, to pursue my dreams. So I always like there's so much like community on the other side if you have like the courage to share your story. I really do. And we all need it. And we all need to talk about like what's going on with us. And we're all very similar. And I love hearing people's like I love hearing people's stories and backgrounds. I may be so annoying because that means I tell everyone mine thinking that they want to hear mine. I'm like, I want to hear your story. Of course, you want to hear mine. But yeah, and I promise you, and it's scary. And do it like I did. Don't do it right. Like, do it through characters if that's scary. Like, write fictional, you know, whatever you're going through, put it in characters in like an imaginary world. which is what literature is, and what is film is, and TV. So do that then. If it's hard to just say like this happened to me, or like I feel this way, put it through. Hide behind people. I love it, and it's more powerful that way sometimes.
Oh, amazing advice. Thank you so much, Jackie. Now, tell us where we can find you. Tell us where they can catch Generación Porque. And
Is
yeah.
an HBO Latino linear. So if you have a TV and cable, HBO, and of course it's on HBO Max. And then you can find me, the Jacqueline Pereda, and any of the social networks. Social media channels,
social networks.
What am I? I'm such a boomer sometimes. You can find me on the social networks.
On the interwebs.
On the internet.
And
if you have Wi-Fi, if you have connected internet.
If you have an Ethernet cable.
So much fun.